Ladies and gentlemen, Bel Air, Season 1, Episode 5, first TV review I'm doing. If you want to see more TV reviews, let me know down in the comments or on Twitter at CoreyBEET. So we're about to hop right on into this thing. Overall, for Bel Air, look, I have my problems with the show because I feel like they've deviated a lot from what Fresh Prince was. But if you want to hear an overall viewpoint of the show, I can do that for later on. For now, we're going to stick on episode 5, PA2LA. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. We just going to jump right on into this thing. We start off with Will and Trey. They are headed to Bel Air. They are driving there. And I got to say this. When it comes to Trey, I think that they did a good job of representing who Trey was in Fresh Prince. A great casting job. So nods to them on that, ups to them on that. As it pertains to him going into the house, him being cool with Aunt Viv was always the person trying to take up for Trey on Fresh Prince. That is until he tried to date Hillary. So they did a good job. He bought cookies for Aunt Viv. It was all good. He teased Will about going to Bel Air Academy and wearing suits for dinner. So to that point, up to that standpoint, I think that they did a good job of casting who Trey was. There is one problem that I have. I'll get to it later in this review, but we'll keep it moving. We'll get to that later. Moving on, Hillary planned a party for her classmates, and I'll give them this. Hillary, when it comes to Fresh Prince, Hillary always was a daddy's girl. She was always Uncle Phil's girl. Vivian was the one that was a little tough on her, so I'll give them props on that. I've enjoyed the casting of Vivian Banks in Bel Air. Now, they've done a good job with that. Overall, Hillary, I really feel as though when it comes to the earlier episodes, I didn't quite understand how they came with the viewpoint of Hillary is a good cook now, especially considering when we go back to Fresh Prince, we consider the flambe episode. But Hillary as an influencer in 2022, that makes sense. So I can give them the nod on that. Moving on, we had Will, we had Hillary. He asked her for her advice on whether he should move back to Philly or not. She said that, you know what, she thought that he should stay. And it's not that I don't mind the Will and Hillary relationship, but I want to know if this is a reboot of Fresh Prince, where is Will and Ashley? Ashley was, if you go back to Fresh Prince, Ashley was the first person to warm up to Will. She was the first person to get close with Will, and that went on throughout the entirety of Fresh Prince. So, I don't see that in the first 5 episodes. Maybe that's coming. I don't know. But yeah, man, Will and Ashley, that was the close relationship, not Will and Hillary. It's not that I don't mind what they're doing with Will and Hillary. Just as a Fresh Prince connoisseur, it was Will and Ashley all that time. That's just me. Moving on, we got to know who Hillary's classmates were. Kylo, Fanta, Monica, Jared, and Nathan. And they didn't serve much of a purpose in this episode outside of the brothers playing a prank on the whole family, to which, I don't know, that felt extra to me. Why even do that? Why even have that in the show? I didn't enjoy it at all. It wasn't funny. It didn't do anything for me. To which, another thing, speaking of funny, overall in Bel Air, it's a drama, and as an old Fresh Prince fan, I'm like, where's the comedy, man? I've been waiting on comedy, and that Brothers Prank, that ain't comedy. It didn't make me laugh. I just sat there and I looked at it whatever. Moving on, we got to Uncle Phil, and we got to Carlton. And Uncle Phil told Carlton how he got Will off, and this is my thing, man. Speaking of miscasting, Carlton. Carlton is cussing in front of Uncle Phil, and it is results in Uncle Phil begging Carlton, you have to promise me, please do not tell on. Please keep the secret. Like, when? You see, if this was a show named anything else, we could judge the show based off of its own merits. But they went and they said it was a redo of Fresh Prince. When would Uncle Phil beg Carlton or Will to do anything? Uncle Phil would threaten them with their lives. Like, I hadn't seen enough of Uncle Phil threatening Will and Carlton with their lives if they didn't do anything. So I'm watching Uncle Phil, watching Fresh Prince, not Fresh Prince, watching Bel Air, and I'm like, I need a little bit more toughness out of Uncle Phil. Like, man, can we get more? Because Uncle Phil is not a beggar. He is I will threaten your life, do it or else type of person, and I just don't see it. Moving on, we had Aunt Viv. She was talking to Reed, and he tried to talk her back into getting into painting. And you know what, man? I don't mind this story arc from Aunt Viv. You know what? She was a painter. This wasn't the case in Fresh Prince, but this is something that I don't mind. They're adding this on, and if we're writing a story arc to where Aunt Viv gets back into painting, and they're doing something significant with it, then I can get with that. I can get with it. So we'll see what happens going forward. And yeah, man, I can get with this. We also saw at the concert, Congressman Turley is talking to Uncle Phil about toning down his rhetoric about defunding the police. Uncle Phil stands his ground, and we're on a story there to which I felt like the whole defunding the police was a thing that was shoehorned in because they wanted to relate to this era and the problems that were going on in this era. So I didn't really feel a need for that to be in the show, but nevertheless, it's thrown in, and we'll see how it turns out. Another thing that I felt that was shoehorned in, Ashley. Speaking of Ashley earlier in the show, it's revealed that Ashley has a crush on Lucia. And look, man, just like I said earlier in the show, it is a reboot of Fresh Prince. In Fresh Prince, Ashley had the crush on a little boy. If we go on further, another little boy sung, Little T, if I'm not mistaken, if that was his name, sung happy, shout out to all my OG Fresh Prince fans, sung happy birthday to Ashley. And like, why do we feel the need? Like, and I see, like, when it comes to plot holes and when it comes to things to which Bel Air does not honor when it comes back to old school Fresh Prince, everybody says, well, this is what it would be like if it was made in 2022. And I call BS on that, man. Like, Ashley liked the boy back on Fresh Prince. What is the point of doing this now? Like, I don't get a lot of things in this show, and a lot of things where we come out and we say, like, it looks as though to me that they wanted to deviate far from what Fresh Prince was in a lot of cases. In some cases, they do a good job of honoring things, but in a lot of cases, it's like, well, Carlton would have never been the villain. Ashley would have never, like, no. So I look at a lot of things and I'm like, what is the point? And speaking of Carlton, man, like, what are we doing, man? Carlton is not the villain, man. Like, I just don't get that. Carlton is not a drug head. Like, and a lot of people have said, well, Carlton, he actually did speed. And like, no. What Carlton did on Fresh Prince was that he found some pills that he did not know was speed. And once he found out that it was speed, after he took him, he freaked out. So I don't know where they're going with this. This whole Carlton versus Will thing, I'm not feeling. And like, no, man, I'm not feeling Carlton at all. Because it's a reboot of Fresh Prince. If it would have been its own show, then we just could have judged Carlton, the character, on its own merits and how they've portrayed him on the show's own merits. But it's a reboot of Fresh Prince, and I'm not feeling it. That maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Moving on. We go to the concert. And like, at what point was Uncle Phil a hip hop head. Like Uncle, if you go back to Fresh Prince, Uncle Phil was a jazz head. He loved jazz, but that's neither here nor there. We get to the concert. Will is staying in LA. Trey doesn't like it, and eventually we get to a scene where Trey and Will is going back and forth. They get into a little tussle, a little fight, and you know what? Trey is very upset, and I like I said earlier, I like how they've portrayed. Excuse me. I like how they portrayed Trey, but here's the one problem that I have. Jazz is the best friend, man. Like, I can only take Trey and Will's friendship only but so seriously. If you look at Fresh Prince, Jazz was the guy. Trey was just some dude in Philly. So I look at this and I'm like, how is Jazz and Will not best friends? And how are they not the closest of friends? And this whole thing has turned into Trey and Will. So no, I don't like that. Hey, Jazz is supposed to be the guy, not some guy that Will found in an Uber. Like, no, man, I can't get with it. That's just me. Carlton tried to push up on Lisa again as we move on, but Lisa wasn't having it. Like, dude, get away from me. And that's another thing I had to get used to in episodes 1 through 4. It's like Carlton was Lisa's ex. Like, wow, that came out of nowhere. So as we move on, Trey eventually leaves. He didn't try to steal anything. I was waiting on that to happen. Like, if you look at the old Fresh Prince, Trey tried to steal something. He felt bad, so he gave it back. Nevertheless, he leaves. Is that the last that we see of Trey and Bel Air? I don't think it will be, but we'll go on to find out. Closing scene in the show, Will tells Vi that he wants to stay in Bel Air. And now this is something that honors Fresh Prince in the way that it really went down. Vi wanted Will to come home, and you know what? They had that whole show where Will was graduating in high school. Vi wanted them to come home. Will told Vi, that he wanted to stay and that he was staying in Bel Air. But Vi supported Will nonetheless in Fresh Prince, and Vi supports Will nonetheless in Bel Air. So I did like that as we faded to black and as we closed. So that is episode 5 of Bel Air. Y'all tell me what y'all think, man. There are just certain things that it's like you have the template for Fresh Prince. Just follow that template. Like, you don't need to deviate too far off the path. Just for instance, Jeffrey, like cracking jokes on Fresh Prince, arguably bar for bar the funniest guy on Fresh Prince. I need to see a little bit of that on Bel Air. Like, it's not that I don't mind what Jeffrey is now on Bel Air, but give me the dude that was cracking jokes on Uncle Phil. Like, that's what I want to see. That's just me. But let me know what you think. Episode 5, Bel Air, and overall your thoughts on Bel Air down in the comments. You can find me on Twitter at Corey B. Elite. If you want to see more TV episode reviews, let me know down in the comments. And on what TV shows you would like to see reviewed. I am out.